What is up, guys? Crypto Helix here, and today we are going to talk about the absolute feast that Square Enix and the Final Fantasy VII Remake team have provided for us this week. Before we go any further, make sure you guys give this video a like and be sure to subscribe for more Final Fantasy and gaming related content. You can also catch me live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/CryptoHelix. During the PlayStation State of Play event this past Thursday, Final Fantasy VII Remake announced a PS5 upgrade for the game. This is very exciting as it's something fans have been asking for ever since the PlayStation 5 came out. This update will include graphical, gameplay, and system enhancements along with various quality of life improvements for the game. Additionally, there will be two game modes: graphical, which will prioritize 4K resolution, and performance, which will prioritize 60 frames per second gameplay. A new photo mode will be included, so fans will be able to capture and share their favorite moments for the game. Along with these updates comes a final haptic feedback update for the DualSense PlayStation 5 controller, so players can fully immerse themselves with the haptic technology of the PlayStation 5. This upgrade will be free if you own the PlayStation 4 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake and you also own a PlayStation 5. So, when will this be available? The upgrade will be available on June 10th, 2021, along with the newest episode of Final Fantasy VII Remake, Intergrade. With the Intergrade announcement, it appears we are seeing how the Final Fantasy VII Remake team plans to integrate the rest of the original Final Fantasy VII squad into the remake games. This strategy was a theory of mine, but it really isn't too shocking, as it's also how Final Fantasy 15 included new episodes and character backstories. Make sure you follow me on Twitter for my random thoughts like this. With Intergrade, we dive into Yuffie Kisaragi, materia hunter from Wutai. We see Yuffie and her friend Sonin appear in Midgar and become companions with Avalanche. So this is pretty interesting for a few reasons, but don't forget Wutai are considered enemies of Shinra from the Shinra War, and in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Shinra has blamed Wutai for assisting Avalanche in the sector demolitions. Another interesting note is Yuffie's companion Sonin. I don't believe him to be in the original Final Fantasy VII game, but it's hard not to notice his polearm weapon. Do you guys remember who else had a polearm weapon in the original Final Fantasy VII? Could this be a way for the Final Fantasy VII Remake team to test how fighting will work when Cid is implemented in the game? It's hard to tell, but it's definitely an interesting thought. Intergrade appears to take place parallel to the Final Fantasy VII Remake story, with Yuffie and Sonin arriving after Cloud has fallen into the Sector 7 slums church. We get to see various pieces of gameplay from the Yuffie episode, which includes fighting and some new menus. One dialogue menu change you'll see is that Yuffie has a throw command, which is definitely accurate given the type of weapon she uses, but it's also definitely new to the Final Fantasy VII Remake game. You'll also notice some combo moves in the fighting sequences between Yuffie and Sonin, which is another new dynamic we have yet to see. As of right now, we do not know the individual price of the Intergrade episode, but we do know that Intergrade will come with the standard PS5 version of the game for $69.99 and the deluxe version of the game for $89.99. Based on those two prices, you can probably assume the new episode will be anywhere from $10 to $30 individually. Along with the Final Fantasy VII Remake news, Square Enix also announced two new mobile games based around the Final Fantasy VII world. The first, titled Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, a BR game for iOS and Android set in Midgar before the events of Final Fantasy VII. In terms of story, this appears to be how Shinra has created their soldier program, and in terms of gameplay, this will appear to be a typical BR adaptation with some Final Fantasy touches such as magic, abilities, chocobos, and summons. Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier will be available for iOS and Android worldwide this year, but no specific release date was given. Along with Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis was also announced. Ever Crisis is yet another remake of the original Final Fantasy VII game and will be a chapter-structured mobile game that will in time cover the entirety of the Final Fantasy VII timeline, including the events of the original game and the compilation titles Advent Children, Before Crisis, Crisis Core, and Dirge of Cerberus. Gameplay for Ever Crisis will be a more one-to-one conversion from the original Final Fantasy VII game, and fighting sequences will feature turn-based combat the original players are used to. This appears to be a way to bring some new visual light while still maintaining the story integrity and combat of the original Final Fantasy VII game, something a good amount of the Final Fantasy VII player base wanted to see. This is a fantastic approach to introduce new fans into the original Final Fantasy VII game, and including the compilation titles is another great way for fans to experience the rich lore and expanse those titles have on the original Final Fantasy VII game. Ever Crisis is set to release in 2022 on iOS and Android, and will release chapters at given intervals. So there you have it, guys. We get a free PS5 upgrade for Final Fantasy VII Remake. We get a new episode introducing Yuffie. We get 2 new mobile games, a BR, and an adaptation of the original game. I am very excited myself. This is a great time to be a Final Fantasy fan. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We'll see you next time.